Hello, everyone. Welcome to Truth in the Age of Climate Crisis, Journalism's Role in Exposing Climate Misinformation. I'm Steve Sapienza, Senior Editor for U.S. News Partnerships with the Pulitzer Center, and I also manage our Truth Decay Science and Misinformation Initiative. The Pulitzer Center is a nonprofit that strives to combine breakthrough journalism and audience engagement. Our reporting grants, global networks, collaboration, and expertise strengthen and deepen enterprise and investigative reporting by freelance and staff reporters while extending its reach and impact. I want to thank the Howard Hughes Medical Institute's Science and Educational Media Group and HHMI's Rich Stone, who's here in the audience, for its partnership on this event and its support of our Truth Decay reporting initiative, as well as our Connected Coastlines climate reporting initiative. I also want to thank the staff here at IJF and all the volunteers that make this amazing festival possible, and all of you for choosing this panel. Thank you. With us today are three accomplished journalists with strong backgrounds reporting on science and climate issues in Latin America, Africa, and the US and across the globe. They will share their experiences reporting on climate misinformation, and we'll discuss how it's created, amplified, spread, the industries and organizations that are involved in spreading it, and they'll also share some tips and methods for tracking and reporting climate misinformation. We're going to start things off with introductions from the speakers, followed by a conversation, and then audience Q&A, so jot down your questions for later. Full disclosure, the Pulitzer Center has or is currently supporting projects involving all of the speakers here today, proudly supported. Florencia, why don't you take it away?
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. As Steve said, my name is Florencia Ballarino. I'm a science journalist and editor at Chequeado. Chequeado is a non-profit organization that has been working for almost 15 years in Argentina to improve the quality of public debate and fight against misinformation. With the support of Pulitzer Center, Chequeado carried out the project Unmasking Misinformation about climate change in Argentina, aiming to identify and prevent false narratives. Based on our daily monitoring on social media, we created a database of misinformation, such as posts, images, or videos, and select material to verify according to different criteria, for example, how viral the content in social media is. And after analyzing all the disinformation, we identified three main false narratives circulating during the presidential campaign in Argentina. The first narrative denied that climate change and its consequences. For example, it said that climate change is a creation of socialism, or maybe that heat waves have always existed. The second narrative denied that human activities are the responsible for global warming, saying, for example, that the sun is the main cause. And the last narrative propagates conspiracy theory mainly about two topics, chemtrails or chemical trails, and the objective of the United Nations 2030 agenda. Chequeado published a series of articles to debunk these false narratives with data and information based on scientific evidence. But we know that debunking misinformation is not enough. Our goal is to make audiences more prepared to recognize false narratives, false information and false narrative, yes. As a result, also inform who the actor behind the misinformation were, mainly actors with a libertarian or right-wing perspective, and what strategies were used to disinform, such as the data selection or the appeal to false experts. During this month, we have learned the importance of working in different formats, such as videos or images or podcasts and different social media to reach diverse audiences. It is crucial to identify trends in disinformation and the actor who is spread it, as it can help prevent misinformation from going viral. Besides, it is also important to identify information gaps, issues that is not easy to find data and fill them with accurate information. We know that the false narrative about climate crisis distorts the perception of the science behind, and nowadays our role as journalists is more important than ever. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here today. My name is Ugochi Anyaka-Oluigbo. I'm an environmental journalist from Nigeria, but I'm based in France. I worked as a news anchor on TVC News in Nigeria, and I hosted an environmental show with about 100 episodes. So people knew me for my environmental reporting than my job as a news anchor. And currently I'm freelancing. I work with Drilled Media. As a freelancer, I also work with Orato World Media as a first-person storyteller. And we're just working on a project on climate disinformation, and we'll be talking more about that project here. And someone walked in here, and I thought to say hello to him, James Fawn. He was among those who gave me my first chance as an environmental journalist back in 2010, and I've not seen him in over 14 years. So it's good to see you, James. And yeah, that's about me. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Hi, my name's Amy Westervelt. I'm a climate journalist and have been for 20-something years. I was a print journalist for a long time and then got into doing audio, mostly because I felt like we needed to get a little bit more narrative about climate reporting. So I started a true crime podcast about climate change called Drilled in 2018, and that has now mushroomed into sort of a multimedia reporting project. So we have reporters all over who work together on stories to look at how different entities are obstructing climate action, and that often means that we're tracking climate disinformation from place to place. So looking at really like how it's making its way into educational curricula, what global PR firms are doing to spread this stuff, the role of management consultancies, all of that kind of thing, and especially how they're working across multiple countries. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you all. Maybe we could just start off by exploring a little more of the problem that's facing us. And Amy, maybe you could define misinformation, climate misinformation and disinformation for us.
Yeah, I was just telling Steve before this, my favorite, like, quick definition is that disinformation is wrong on purpose for money. It's intention is sort of the main difference between the two. It's whether or not the person spreading it is intending to mislead either for political gain or for financial gain, or whether it's accidental. And I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about whether the intent even matters, because the result is still the same, and the result is sort of what we have to deal with. So, yeah. And
Florencia, what were some kind of prevalent methods for misinformation being spread that you saw in the reporting that you did? Where was it turning up? Who was it reaching?
Yes, most misinformation came from organized campaigns by groups that benefit from the line action of climate change. In our project, we found that libertarian and right-wing groups were the main sources of misinformation, pushing this false idea that we have to choose between economic growth and protecting the environment. Mm-hmm. More misinformation initially circulates in the United States or Europe in English, and then circulating in Latin America in Spanish or in Portuguese, another language. But it happened the opposite also. No? There are some misinformation that are local disinformation, for example, in Argentina about cows. If I
Does this
try
involve
to,
methane?
yes, I have an example, and it is a feedback loop. No, yes, I have an example. Last year, in the major media outlet in Argentina published an article titled, "According to NASA, the Argentine cows do not pollute the environment."
Wow.
Was a very desired title, a very desired piece of news, but a false news. And I began to investigate. I went to the source. The NASA paper didn't say nothing about the Argentine cows. It's a study about the carbon dioxide emissions and not say nothing about methane, for example. And so what happened? The media outlet was copy and paste and press release for the Argentina Institute of Meat Promotion and unbiased sources that who malinterpreted the conclusion of this paper. This is why it's so important to check our sources of information, no?
Yeah, and there's that money connection.
Yeah.
So, there's the misinformation you mentioned related to political campaigns, sort of the denial, and then there's sort of the work you all are working on, which is more about delay. Can you talk about that aspect of disinformation related to climate change and the sort of delay strategy?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's a paper from, I want to say 2019, it might be 2020, called Discourses of Delay. It's very worth checking out, where social scientists really kind of, dug into this and laid out what are sort of the new ways that vested interests are trying to push off regulation. So they've moved from outright denying it, although that, of course, still happens, to it's not that bad, it's not that urgent, we're on top of it, the fossil fuel industry is already solving it, a lot of false solutions stuff, and actually even jumping, from not like denying it entirely to, oh, now it's too late to do anything, so don't worry about it. There's also like a little twist on this, a fun twist, that's like really feeding into nationalism and ecofascism too, which is, the climate crisis is so bad that like we can't let any immigrants into the country. It's a little flavor that is mostly coming from people who were, up until a couple of years ago, denying that climate change was even a problem. So, it's it's important to follow these trends. But yeah, that's what we're seeing almost 90% of the time. It's more that flavor than it's just not happening at all.
Yeah. I think from where I come from, I mentioned some time back that I had attended a conference in Morocco. It was a climate conference, and we were speaking to a politician from Nigeria. He had a controversy around chopping down, trees for a major highway, and that the forest was quite important. It was, important as a carbon sink. And so when we asked him, why are you doing this? And he said to us, look around you since you came here. Have you seen any trees? How many trees did you see here? So he's like...
In Morocco.
Yeah, in Morocco. So, he's like saying, and that's the information he's been passing around. We really don't need trees. They are good, but not so important. In Morocco, how many trees have you seen? In Dubai, how many trees have you seen?
Look,
so
they're
that's
doing
part,
fine without trees.
Yeah, we can do it. So that's part of the narrative just for finance. It's just to be able to cut down those trees and sell those trees. And, culturally as well, it's been there over the years, and now we're seeing different ways of misinforming or disinforming people. But culturally, there are cultures that when you balance out the message, then that's the traditional knowledge, but it's not what science is saying. Where I come from, we had a problem with erosion, wide gullies came and swallowed up communities. But when you ask them, they say, someone in the community killed a python because it's not allowed. So when you kill a python, the gods would fight back. So the gods came and fought back, and then it caused you know, like it formed like a python. So that's what they believe. And, you know, they've run with that belief for so many years. But with time and with science, they realize, you know, that this is not what actually happened. You chop down all the trees, you know, and that misinformation was there. Even when I grew up, that's what I heard, you know, and this man killed a python, and that's what happened. So with time, they realized that they started building different houses, types of houses that, you know, couldn't let the rainfall runoff, you know, go out easily. They had so much happened, deforestation, and now they are replanting trees and growing, and they're seeing evidently that this is what caused that. So that information is there. I mean, sometimes as journalists, we need to respect their traditions, but respect what they say, but, you know, gently and nicely try to tell them, you know, this is what is happening to you. This is the truth about what science says about your problem. So it's been there for so long, and with AI, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll get to AI in a little bit. But that's a really great example of kind of local clashes, local beliefs, and climate misinformation. I'm wondering about more kind of organized efforts, and given all the extraction of fossil fuels coming out of West Africa, you know, what do you see that are kind of more deliberate kind of approaches to disinformation that happens in that region?
Yeah. I think for many OA communities like myself, where you're also developing, and then we say, you know, you have to make that leap from fossil fuel to cleaner energy. But, you know, for Nigeria, we have no electricity, you know, and they tell you we need to use fossil fuels. So sometimes it's really difficult when the fossil companies come in and tell you, you know, this energy, these sources of energy, they're not going to work. You know, this can't power anything for you. You need big, you know, to power your industry. So the fossil companies as well, they are pushing back, you know, to make sure that they continue what they're doing. And in several ways, they are misinforming communities as well, even though, you know, many communities are fighting for their rights, you know, to say we don't want the exploration anymore, especially because of the impacts on the communities with the pollution and all of that. So we see oil companies also coming to say, oh, we have a project on renewable energy, but on the other hand, you know, we're destroying your environment, but we have a little solution for you, renewable energy. You know, that's part of what they do. So they work with the government to stifle voices and then to push out their messages in different ways. I had reported on how a fuel station sited in a residential area was polluting water, so people couldn't, you know, run their taps anymore, because when you open it, you would smell, you know, petrol. And then when I finished that story, I was not in the country, and then someone called me and said, oh, the company called us that we should do another story. So I spoke with the community people. I don't talk to the companies usually. So they went back to the office and said, oh, we need a new reporter to cover this. I don't know what deal happened behind. I didn't ask. But I said, okay, this is what I've covered, and this is where you find, you know, what I've done. And then they did another story to say, oh, we're working on it. It's not that bad, you know. So it happens. And sometimes, because the fund companies, the fund news organizations, you know, we know that we know where the money goes, and we know who has, you know, the stronger voice many times.
Fascinating stuff. And Florencia, I'm wondering, you know, in your work where you've been tracking this misinformation, were there any surprises of kind of who the sources were, and what, you know, who was generating and sharing climate misinformation?
Yes, because the project was during the presidential campaign. We have a very outsider candidate, no, that represent the libertarianism and right-wing groups. There are some experience in Latin America with president that denies climate change, because in Brazil it was Bolsonaro that is very similar that now our president. And we didn't expect some things. For example, during the campaign, he denies climate change in different interviews. For example, the journalist is asked a question, and they try to deny climate change in the interview, and the other topics go away. And is a bit that we have to discuss that if climate change exists or not, no? Because this is the most of Argentinian people believe in climate crisis and the impacts. They suffer the consequence of climate change in Argentina. And now we are very concerned about what happened with the policy environment, no, of this government.
Amy, you've done a lot of work looking at public relations related to the fossil fuel industry, and so you've spent time and seen trends related to disinformation. So, how much of what we're seeing today is kind of really new on that front?
I mean, almost none of it. I feel like they've had sort of these I've talk about it as being like 5 core narratives that they go back to over and over again. And the main new thing now is the technology piece, that those narratives can be created by AI, so that makes it a lot cheaper, and be amplified in minutes. And I'll give an example from a story that we're working on now, where we're looking at anti-renewables, kind of opposition to renewables, and where some of the narratives are coming from and how they're flowing from country to country and that sort of thing. And in Australia, there was an entirely fake scientific paper written with AI that got picked up from a bunch of local newspapers, and it took, within the same day, the scientific journal that this was supposedly published in said, hey, this is fake. We didn't publish this. This is not valid science. This isn't peer reviewed, everything. But it was too late by that point. It already had a life of its own in all these different Facebook groups and things like that. So that is new, the distribution mechanism. But they always go back to, and by they, I mean the fossil fuel industry, but also other polluting industries that don't want to be regulated. I mean, it's very basic. It's like we make money off of being able to pollute common resources with impunity, and therefore don't want to be regulated. That's the goal. And they, go back over and over again to, we make your lives work. How many ads have you seen that are like, what if we didn't have fossil fuels? And it's like, no phones, no makeup, no clothes. They love to remind us that we're all complicit in this problem, even though they've also controlled the systems in which we don't have choices. They love to talk about the tie between fossil fuel and national security, even though, actually renewables would probably be better for national security. Then there's the whole culture washing thing. So sports washing, art washing, all of these things that they sponsor to be not just, hey, we're a good neighbor and we're a good member of the community, but also it makes it harder for people to criticize them, because the more people they can make feel somewhat dependent on them, the more social license they secure. So those things have been going on forever. Even really things we think of as new. My favorite example of this is the crisis actor myth. So whenever there's a climate protest, the number one, the first response is always, these aren't real activists, these are paid protesters. There are examples of that on behalf of Standard Oil for against coal protests from 1914. So these are very old stories. That's part of why they work well, actually, is they've spent a lot of money and a lot of time to really ingrain these ideas in our heads and make us think that the way they want us to see the world is the way that the world works. And so they're able to kind of go back to whichever one is most effective at any given time.
And they've already spent a lot of money kind of putting that into the public sphere.
Including, in school curricula, where Ugochi and I have been working on a story about a media company, a very well-respected media company, Discovery, that, is generally considered to be a pretty innocuous science programming company. But they have a whole education arm that produces corporate-sponsored curricula with lots of fossil fuel funders, and also animal ag people, so dairy industry, meat industry, chemicals, and smuggle that into K through 12 curricula. So it's like they start really early, and they are very good at getting into really like every part of the information stream. Even like, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm going on and on.
No.
Last thing, my current obsession is the way that they use economic models to spread disinformation. So like we tend to think of economic models as being objective, but like they're not. You know, someone decides what data to look at, right? And then the analysis flows from there. So if the American Petroleum Institute, for example, commissions a study on the economic impacts of certain climate policies, they can say, don't include the impacts of not acting. You know, we only want to look at the cost of what it will take to replace X number of, you know, oil and gas wells with windmills or whatever it is. And then they have this model, which they usually commission from a very reputable outfit like a McKinsey or various other entities. And then they repeat it over and over again to government. Like, well, according to this analysis by McKinsey, and McKinsey gets to say, like, we just crunched the numbers they asked us for, you know? So it's just like this very subtle way that they shape all of the ways that we think about this issue.
Fascinating stuff. I want to shift the conversation into kind of responses, journalism, the ecosystem. How can newsrooms and journalists best, respond to this issue? And Florencia, I'm just kind of wondering, in Argentina, from what you've seen, how are newsrooms dealing with this? Are there certain methods or approaches that seem to work better than others in that context?
Yes, it's very important. Oh, yeah, it's very important make pre-banking and debunking disinformation, and the media literacy is very important to give to the audiences the tools that we can recognize false information and fight against false narratives. This is very important. There are, it's very important as a journalist to check our sources, try to work with science evidence, with the support of scientifics and other experts, and I always say that the climate change is not only a science story, no? It's a story about economy, politicians, food, gender,
healthcare,
solutions. There are many sides of the story, and it's very important for us to try to give accurate information for our audiences.
Your organization does the fact-checking. Chequeado does the fact-checking very well. But do you feel like, the bigger media outlets handle it very well, misinformation? They know how to spot it and call it out? And I'm talking about in Argentina, yeah.
Yeah, in some cases, yeah, but there are different things, no? Because our job is, as a journalist, our job as a journalist is very complicated in the social and political context now. I don't know, maybe one journalist have to write a story, 5 or 7 stories in the day, and it's very crazy. And this is the reason that in some cases there are journalists that have not time to, for example, check a source of information or speak with a scientific. There are different problems that we can affront in our daily work, no?
Yeah, well, Thank God you guys are continuing to
Yeah,
fact
yeah,
check
yeah.
and on the scene. Over to you all. What about what kind of background experience and tools might journalists need to spot and debunk greenwashing? Are there any tips or advice you might give to journalists, people like myself who are not science journalists, like how to respond or even be prepared to respond to it?
For me, I would always say ask the people most impacted, and that's what I believe in. So when you get this information, it's very important to go to the community or go to the lives of those, or go to the people whose lives are impacted by whatever story you've heard, and ask them, what are you feeling? How do you feel? What are you seeing? What's happening to you? For me, that's the very important step to take first. And then, of course, there are online websites or organizations, like Africa Check, that can help you, fact check your information, and also try to work with individuals. Or sometimes it could be just a friend of yours if you can't afford a fact checker, like Wood and Lee. And then ask your friend, could you go through with this and then let me know what you think about, could you just spot what I've missed and let me know what, before you publish your story, find out what is wrong with this, what have I omitted, or what are the questions that people would ask, about what my story. I think it's very important. But for me, the most important, as I said earlier, is the lives impacted by the stories or by the publications. And of course, try to speak to different scientists and find out, there's also this story around carbon capture, and then, but they forget to talk about, the communities where these projects will be cited. What are they saying? Do they know the facts? Have you been able to, convince them and confuse them, and they don't really understand the truth? And then they say, okay, yes. And sometimes, they force people into, accepting whatever projects they bring to you. And some countries where it's not even allowed, you're not even allowed to protest, or it's dangerous to protest or dangerous to speak up. Sometimes they're not able to speak up. So the narrative that what we're bringing to you is the best, it's better for you, it keeps flying. And then, but when you speak to the real people and when you give them time, they really explain to you that, we don't want this, or we're suspicious of this technology, or we don't accept this, but, what can we do? In certain countries, you have no option. And then you just, feel the negative impacts of whatever has come to you.
Absolutely. I'm still trying to understand net zero. Anyway.
Don't bother. I feel like what
Well, I'm
Florencia
curious-
and Ugochi said, yes, that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm curious, what are some other potential resources for journalists out there?
I will say,
what about
okay.
like databases? Are there databases that?
There are tons of databases and things like that. The thing I always talk about as being, I think, very helpful, both for fact-checking your own work and for providing information to the public, especially people who are not, experts on climate and whatnot themselves, is primary documents. So I think if you can show people, I'll just give an example of a story that we did on, there was this group of fishermen on the west coast of the US who sued various oil companies over climate change. And I went, I was like, okay, I'm doing a story on this. I went out on a bunch of fishing boats and got very sick for months. But like half of them were total full-on climate deniers. They were like, maybe it's sunspots, volcanoes, like the classic hits. And I was like, this is so interesting. How did these were named plaintiffs in a court case against oil companies about climate change and the way that these companies had, lied and hidden information. And they said, well, we were shown documentation, and particularly they had been shown patent applications for things like an oil tanker that can navigate a melting Arctic, or like offshore platforms that had been re-engineered for sea level rise. And these were from Shell, Chevron, Texaco, ExxonMobil, all the greats, in like the late 70s and early 80s. So, they were shown these things, and these people were like, for us, it doesn't matter why it's happening. Like it enabled them to sort of not have to grapple with the scientific question and just jump straight to, it's not fair that this company had information that they used to make decisions about how their business works and to protect themselves from this thing that was coming, and we were not given the same opportunity. So it was like, it was really interesting to me because they could sort of continue to have like their group identity, which was very opposed to believing in climate change, but also still be working to hold oil companies accountable for like hiding information about this issue. So yeah, anyway, to me, I was like, wow, this is interesting that like these were people who were very committed to not kind of accepting the science, but this issue of fairness and equal access to information was quite convincing to them. And I was like, oh, this is, maybe I don't need to like, I don't know, get everybody to understand how the atmosphere works.
I guess we'll take questions from the audience soon. If anyone has questions, wonderful. Is there, I don't know if there's a mic.
I had a question for Ugochi.
Okay, here we go.
Yes. Had a question for Ugochi, right?
Yes.
Sorry. There's been a lot of interest in Nigeria from Italian oil major Eni. Recently also a big corruption scandal. My question was, have you seen any misinformation around those interests, organized or not organized?
For Eni, I think I've followed Shell more than Eni. And I think the misinformation is the same thing. It's the same strategy that they all use around, Nigeria needs fossil fuel to develop. Nigeria needs to forget about renewables. Yes, you have access to, enormous sunshine, but renewables can develop you because you really have to develop. And then they come up with the whole energy mix around nuclear energy and renewable energy. We call it an energy mix. So we have all the mix of energy, but the truth is we all still depend in Nigeria on fossil fuels. And I think the language now is that because also developed nations have not been able to fund, developing nations to be able to transit. And so the language easily right now is that while we are working on renewable energy, we still need fossil fuels to develop. And that's the language. And of course, the oil companies and sometimes because of the activism that is going on in Nigeria now, for example, in Ogoni, we're hearing Shell saying they are shutting down their onshore production to go offshore because there's just more stress with people, with the communities who are protesting and court cases that they are having right now, where even the farmers are winning cases against oil companies. So that's the conversation is still on, so much dependent on the use on fossil fuel. And it will keep going on for now, at least. And except the people keep fighting and fighting. And that's where we are.
Now it's on. I had a question about how to find journalists to collaborate with, because I've worked on an investigation and we had an internal discussion within the team a lot on how, if that particular journalist is a trustworthy journalist to work with, to find information on the ground, but there was no way that I could see the track record of this journalist. So how do we know which journalist and which also media company in countries which are very far from us and that maybe speak languages that are different from our own, how do we know that that person is someone that will not get corrupted, or that media organization, even, you mentioned even big media organizations that I would trust blindly or almost, that can be quite, sometimes have some interest behind them. It seems quite tough because also as journalists we also quote other journalists and other publications because we can't do all the work ourselves.
I would say recently I had that same problem. I was supposed to travel to another African country to report, and I've never been there before, and I was worried as well for my own safety. So I had started asking questions. I'm looking for someone, a journalist in this country, and thankfully we have this environmental group on Signal. And then when I found somebody, and then I asked the founder of the group, and I said, do you know this person? Can you vouch for this person? So I understand it's difficult sometimes, but I think when you find someone, and sometimes you can't even find any footprint of these people online. So I even Googled this person. I didn't see anything. I was worried. I'm like, okay, I hope, when and then I was also careful. I didn't go straight to say, look at what I'm investigating. I just said, oh, I'm sorry. I just said climate change. And then I said, okay, when I'm traveling, there are some stories there are some things that some sound bites that I absolutely have to get. And then I focus on those ones. And then some of them I can do virtually. And it feels a lot more safer. So when I get the sound that I really need from that country and I leave, I can do the rest online. So sometimes just ask questions and ask people. Like Amy can, she can also start because she's done that a lot. She's been able to find people to work with. But I understand that you need to be sure that this person has, believes in what you believe, and it's not has not been bribed and cannot expose you. It's very tricky. It's a very tricky one. But I just keep asking questions and take your time. You need time before. And sometimes I know it's very fast. We need these things as quickly as possible, but it takes time sometimes.
Thank you.
How did you find me?
Yeah, same. It's like asking people that to vouch, and yeah, it just takes time. And honestly, like, it doesn't always work out, like, there's been some tough experiences there. But you learn from that and you move on, and I don't have like a good silver bullet solution. It's
Maybe.
But except just that, like, I think it is a situation where, like, it kind of needs to be person to person referrals, and then building that relationship to make sure that they're legit before you are like, welcome to my Google Drive, Yeah.
Because some people are online, but physically they don't exist. Yeah, someone saw us yesterday and said, oh, you're real people. So sometimes you've been online so much, you've been speaking with people, and you don't, are they real or are they fake? You don't even know. So much is going on right now, and I understand your concern.
There may be some large, science journalist organizations or environmental journalist organizations you can start to tap into and try to get into their message boards or listservs and ask around for references that way as well.
Yeah, I think I mentioned EJNet earlier. Yeah. EJNet is a very good resource where you find so many journalists from all over the world. They've been there for many years, so follow EJNet, and you can find a lot of journalists there who are doing great work as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, there are a very different network. Oh, sorry. There are different network. For example, I'm the president of the Argentina Network of Science Journalism. There are a world organization of scientific journalists, and if you check the website, there are a list of science journalists on the world. Yeah.
Okay, next question.
Yep, thank you. My name is Jakub, and I'm a journalist and lately also publisher and editor from the Czech Republic. And I have been following the subject of climate for really 30 years. So I have enough experience to remember that there was a time that the term misinformation was not used actually. It somehow appeared at a certain point. And I know that you tried to define the term, but I have slight problems with the definition because, as you can see, English is not my first language, but I think in every language you have two opposites of truth, which is mistake and a lie. Right. A lie is intentional, mistake is unintentional. Then here is a concept of misinformation, which to me is basically a lie intentionally dressed to look like a truth. That's what is misinformation to me, and that's what makes it so dangerous, be it for money or for some other reasons people spread those misinformations, those kinds of lies on climate. So I wanted you to reflect on this, whether there was any attempt to track down where the very term misinformation appeared in connection to the climate debate, and also whether there are any strategies thought through how to define misinformation for what it is, which would help, I think, to counter their spreading. Thank you.
Great points. Did you just give us an assignment to track? But no, about the strategies that he's talking about.
I don't know when the term appeared. That's a good question. It'd be interesting to look at. Yeah, I don't know.
No. No, in South America, in Argentina, it's very similar that you said. There are only one word that is disinformation for misinformation and disinformation. There is no difference in the intention, and it's very difficult to define this. Yes. We think about this.
I think also with social media, I think people began to be wary of what's being pushed on social media. And, social media, has also opened our eyes to so many things. I think before the war in Gaza, or with the war in Gaza, we began to see, a different picture of what's been happening in Gaza compared to what we've heard, from major news channels over the years. So social media as well has, on the one hand, been a problem, and on the other hand, it's been able to help people, to propagate, misinformation, and people just for views and then, the companies are also using influencers to, influencers are very powerful these days. They push narratives in different ways. So there's a huge misinformation happening using influencers. I think, for me, misinformation, that word, I think is with social media, social media becoming very, common. I think people began to become very wary of information that has been pushed out on social media.
We might have time for another question.
Okay, yes.
Hi. Considering the example in Argentina and previously in Brazil with Jair Bolsonaro and Trump in the United States, my question is, what can do news organizations when the disinformation comes from the president? And also the news avoidance that is related to that.
It's very complicated, but we try to continue with our work of fact-checking. It's very important. The experience of Brazil tells us that it's very important to verify the public speeches of politicians, regardless their political party. No, and of course, actively monitoring and verifying misinformation and. Maybe pre-banking, for example, there are some issues or some gaps of information that it is very important to fill them with accurate information, for example. This is the better strategist for me, and I don't know, maybe in the future we have more tools to help to this, but there is some new for all of us Argentina and for the organization, no?
All right. Well, we're right up close to time here, so I want to say that if you're a journalist and you've got ideas for reporting on climate or science misinformation, and you might need a little support for that, you could check out the Pulitzer Center's Truth Decay initiative on our website, or you can buttonhole me here around the festival. reach out to us, or reach out to me through our website. I want to thank all of you for coming, and I want everyone to help me give a hand to our speakers today. Thank you so much.